I'm Frank Vaughn. It's May 21st, 2025, and I appreciate all of you. Hundreds of comments came in, some with helpful advice and some with just well wishes. As I navigate this neck injury, I'm pretty sure that I've pulled something on the left side, and because I pulled it so bad, the entirety of the muscle structure around my neck just seized right up. I've been hit by a forklift fully loaded, snapped ligaments in my knee, twisted it out of position. I've slipped my L4 or my L5 vertebrae, I've lost track of which one, 35% out of alignment and got it stuck there with a big disc bulge. I've done a lot of painful things in my time. I don't think this compares. This was a level of discomfort, and I shouldn't even say was because it's still an issue. I thought I was going to be great last night, and I could only sleep in 15-minute increments because it still hurts so bad. I've never experienced anything like this. But I do appreciate all of you for signaling and understanding what I'm going through. And it's interesting, and to open the conversation about Canada being broken, because I just want to talk about this. I'm not going to get highly technical today. We're going to talk about some specifics, but I've had a lot of time to think because I haven't exactly been able to hold a book to read, and my concentration hasn't been there. I can't really position myself with any degree of comfort to even watch podcasts. When I listen to things, I'm not really concentrating on it, so I just default back to thinking on things. And, fundamentally, over the last few days, I can't help but see how broken Canada is, and part of it has to do with my neck. Now, admittedly, I have not tested the Saskatchewan healthcare system since I've been out here. I have a good doctor, but he is 2 hours away. I haven't had to go to the ER yet for anything, but I also don't want to. I'm very used to 5-6 hour wait time, 7 hours, half a day if you actually go. And I can't even imagine sitting in those uncomfortable emergency room chairs with people hacking and gagging all around me. And I don't know if that's the case here in Saskatchewan, but I can't imagine sitting there even for a few hours because it would be more detrimental than just staying home and trying to rest up. It's a healthcare system that you actually don't even really use unless something catastrophic happens to you. But I digress. I appreciate all of you. Now, I don't even know where to begin. I don't think Mark Carney is stupid. There's a new narrative taking shape that he's actually incompetent and that his reputation is going to tank because he swept into the Liberal Party leadership and then he swept into the Prime Minister's office, and he's learning that he can't just issue edicts like he could at the central bank or at Brookfield, and it's going to be this painful adjustment, and that explains why nothing's happening. That explains why Parliament's only going to sit for 3 weeks and then they're all going to go home till the fall. That's why we're not getting a budget, because it's actually Canada's in more trouble than Mark Carney thought. I think Canada's in more trouble than just about anybody thinks. But the idea that Carney doesn't know the situation that Canada's in seems to, in my mind, escape reason. I think Carney's good at what Carney's good at, and that's looking after himself and the interests of his bedfellows. And that may not include the Canadian people, as much as he talks about the Canadian people, and he did the big virtue signaling 1% tax cut for the bottom tier of wage earners. It's all theater. And it actually occurred to me over the last couple of days as I sat there, laid there, tried to get comfortable, that we had a drama teacher for a prime minister for the last 10 years, and now the entire government is doing government by theater. It's all live action role play at this point because those executive orders don't mean anything. $73 billion has been spent without parliamentary approval outside of budget, using these special warrants out of the Governor General's office. It is a vast abuse. Well, actually, I should say in previous times it would be considered an abuse of power of the Governor General's office, but it's actually not. It's perfectly functional. That's why it's happening. It's an abuse of the public. It's a bypassing of Parliament and procedure, supposedly while we're in the middle of an emergency, which we actually are, which I'm going to talk about a little bit. But all of your parliamentarians are sleepy and going home while all this money's being spent. Now, some of the biggest line items in these, and I've gone over this the last couple of days, are, I'm going to get it wrong, but it's like the Ministry of Employment, Social and Employment Services, something like that. It's the the ministry that handles unemployment insurance getting billions and billions of dollars in these last two special warrants. Also, CMHC, some of the biggest line items, billions of dollars going into CMHC. Now, CMHC is the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. They underwrite an incredibly large number of mortgages. I don't have the percentages at my fingertips. We're talking about a majority of the mortgages that are issued in Canada are insured through CMHC. So is all this spending an indication that unemployment claims are going up and that the cost of insuring mortgages is going up, or there's more claims through CMHC? I don't actually know. What I do know is that Canada's unemployment rate is at not an all-time high, but a pre-pandemic high, 6.9%. So that means UI claims are going to be going up. Anyway, all of this is going on absent Parliament. The spending, the fake executive orders. So here's an interesting scenario. The housing market in Canada. We've talked about how hot it is. The media is still talking about how hot it is. During the election cycle, the idea of affordability was the hot button topic. Conservatives were catering to it. Liberals were catering to it. But what happens if it gets to a state where all of the aid that the federal government and the provincial governments hand out to newly landed immigrants isn't enough for them to actually survive in the places that they're landing? They stop coming of their own volition, unless they have a specific advantage that they're trying to accrue to themselves by coming to Canada in the first place. One of those advantages would be rinsing money, not just illegal money. I mean, money laundering is a huge thing. Go watch my videos on that. But also people who just have money in unstable countries that they're happy to take losses on. This is another feature of the Canadian real estate market. Is that somebody, let's just use a figure of $500,000. They have $500,000 in an unstable country. They bring it over here. They're perfectly happy to lose 100,000 or 200,000 of that money because they got 300,000 successfully out of their country. That's another thing that goes on here. But I know that's outside the scope of this video. What happens if, as we're seeing, the real estate market goes soft? So there's all kinds of supply building up in the big hot housing markets. The sales that are happening are hundreds of thousands of dollars below asking price. There's no bidding wars anymore. Liquidity is drying up, as they call it. Cash to buy houses. People are selling at losses. The big interest rate shocks haven't even happened yet. So mortgage renewals coming up in 2025 and 2026 are going to be renewing at much higher interest rates. And there's a real chance, given that all of the seemingly honest people who do mortgage analysis that I pay attention to are all saying get yourself into a fixed rate mortgage here because interest rates are only going to go higher, not lower. There's not going to be this quantitative easing, and there's not going to be an easing of credit, but a further drying up of credit and to lock yourself in. Whether that's good advice or not, the shock of already baked in high interest rates starts really being felt in 25 and 26. So the people who overpaid for their real estate over the last several years are now going to have that bill come due, and they're not going to be able to finance it. So what happens if the value of real estate goes down, all of these people who are holding mortgages start losing money, and they have to sell below what they paid? Well, it's a nightmare. It's nightmare fuel, especially for the overall Canadian economy. This is something that's already happening. When we look at the unemployment numbers, when we look at the drying up of capital inflows into Canada, nobody's investing here. Nobody's investing here. And those who have agreed to invest here, many of them are pulling out because of the political climate, because of the financial climate. Things are bad here, and they're probably only going to get worse. There's a scenario where your real estate prices to buy and sell are still unaffordable for the common person who's working for a wage that isn't enough to survive on, at the same time as rent goes up and the cost of food goes up and everything goes up. The actual value of real estate goes down. And it seems kind of a catch-22 in your mind, but when you think about it long enough, that's exactly what we're seeing When you read about it, that's exactly what we're seeing right now. And I want to talk about the state of unreality for a second. Hopefully you guys can bear with me a little bit here. Canada Post is looking to go on strike. Canada Post, so for those of you who don't know, and I can't imagine there's many of you, they were going to go on strike months ago. They were told to get back to work, but that order had an expiry. We're coming up on the expiry. There's still no contract. In 2021, Canada Post is estimated to have lost $500 million. In 2022, $548 million. 2023, $748 million. 2024 will be another loss. Canada Post is bleeding money all over the place. So what does the union want? The union wants a 19% wage increase over 4 years, 4.75% per year, 10 paid medical leave on top of 7 personal days. So they want 17 paid days off in addition to whatever time off and stat holidays they have already. Fertility treatment benefits, gender-affirming care benefit. I absolutely hate that terminology. It is not gender-affirming. If it was gender-affirming, it would be encouraging you to develop in your healthy body aligned with your biology. Gender-affirming care is not gender-affirming. It's actually gender-avert. It's Orwellian doublespeak. You're affirming the delusion. You're not affirming the biological reality, but they want it paid for either way. Paid meals for shifts of 5 hours or more. They want limited surveillance for productivity. Hang on. I just got to click here. Limited surveillance for productivity, 88% wages if injured at work, vision care benefit, increased health specialist benefit, protection against technology. So if there's technological innovation that threatens their jobs, they want to be protected from technology. No contracting work out. So any attempt by Canada Post to actually make their business viable, because remember, we opened this conversation with the reality that Canada Post is losing a lot of money. They're not allowed to contract anything out. Snow tires for rural mail carriers to be covered. 8-hour routes, no more working more than 8 hours a day. Benefits for temporary employees. Eliminate separate sort of, like, it goes on and it goes on and it goes on, this list of demands that they have. Meanwhile, Man Meat and Gaggenpreet are out there delivering all of your Amazon goods at a fraction of the price. Whether it's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. They're doing it. They're putting Canada Post out of business. I talked to a guy a while ago. He's an eBay seller sitting on hundreds of thousands of items that he can't sell. Because not only is eBay becoming increasingly punitive, he can't afford the price of shipping. Meanwhile, Amazon shipping for free, largely using Gaggenpreet and Man Meat in telecom. And you know what I'm talking about, Brampton Men. That's who delivers Amazon's goods. So the point is, Canada Post is completely out of touch. The union is completely out of touch with reality. Nobody can afford this, but it's not going to stop them from shutting down the mail system in this country at a time when people are still trying to process their taxes. The CRA is having problems with their online uploading of documents, and the country is starting to seize up. It's not functional. Now, this is a process that's been ongoing for a while, but there's a saying, and it's that when you're going bankrupt, it starts slow and then you fall off the cliff. So it starts slow and ends fast. We're getting to the end fast stage. The healthcare system has been seized up for a long time. The education system has been failing the students. They're more concerned with ideology than they are with producing results. The passport system has been broken. The border's wide open. The ports aren't secure. We have massive amounts of drug trafficking happening in this country on an international scale, recognized by international bodies, as we've covered on this channel, while the average liberal voter just denies any of it's happening, even though it's reality. So the country's been seizing up for a while, but now we're starting to really get into the grinding of the gears. Things are starting to smoke now. There's a real problem. And the Canada Post Union seems to be completely oblivious to the demands that they're making, being completely out of line with any semblance of reality. I read a thing, and it was 4 years in the penalty box for Canada because of elbows up, right? Elbowing in hockey is actually illegal. You get penalties for it. Sometimes you get suspended for it. So the Canadian public that supported the Liberal Party, congratulations, you're about to get suspended. It's bad. So we haven't heard anything about this item from the Canadian government, but Donald Trump has revealed that Canada is in discussions to join the U.S. Golden Dome missile defense program, which would mean even more integration and dependence on the U.S. military to protect our interests. I don't know how much money this is going to cost us, but does anybody remember the Mark Carney that ran for the election who said that the era of integration with the United States is over? That was his campaign rhetoric. Quite scary when you consider our proximity to the United States is one of our greatest assets. It's the world's biggest market. It's the world's most liquid market. It's the world's most free market. And they do a lot of buying of our stuff in excess of what we buy from them. It's a pretty good deal. But now, we're looking at more military integration. We're looking at an end to the trade war, a renegotiation. Carney went down there and effectively kissed the ring, even though the media insisted he was tough with Donald Trump. He got schooled. He bent over. Elbows up became elbows down. And they're not even bothering to deliver the news to the Canadian public. The cabinet and Mark Carney are just governing by fiat. We're going to have a limited 3 weeks. And by the way, this isn't just an indictment of the Liberal Party of Canada. Because what is happening over at the Conservative Party? Pierre is not talking about the important issues. About the whole... They had this messaging during the lead up to the leadership vote that they went through that made Pierre leader, and also before the election started, where they were talking about how broken Canada was. But then all of a sudden, the golden man came along, the orange man came along, and it was elbows up, Canada's great. And the whole idea of making Canada great again just fell by the wayside as everybody focused on messaging. But the fact is, we don't really have anybody in a position of power talking about how broken Canada actually is, not just at the federal level, like with the federation and the system itself, and all the things we've covered on this channel with an unelected Senate and I'm sorry, my neck hurts. An unelected Senate, a judiciary that we don't have any power over, no right of recall, no ability to advance bills, provincial rights, which the provinces are autonomous and sovereign, and yet so much federal power has been superimposed over top of that sovereignty. And the only people who can advocate for their sovereignty are the Québécois. Everybody else is met with a hysterical reaction for daring suggest that we seize our God-given rights. Canada's in a bad way, and at the federal level, we don't have a champion telling that story because it's bad news, and politicians aren't very good at delivering bad news. We need leadership right now. We don't have leaders, we have politicians. So this isn't just an indictment of the government. And when I say the government, I'm not even talking about Parliament, so let's talk about that just for a sec. The only thing that Carney can't do is pass new laws or repeal laws. He needs Parliament for those things. We don't know what he's going to do legislatively in the session that's coming up. The session's so short, however, because you have to understand, when they convene a session of Parliament, that convenes the Senate at the same time. When they go to recess, that recesses everybody, so nothing progresses. So the likelihood of anything but maybe the tax cut or something that they want to move on very fast for political optical reasons is actually going to get through 3 readings in the House, pass the Senate, and ascend into law in that 3 weeks. So we're probably not going to see much happen over the next several months on censorship and all these other things. But the fact is, the only thing Carney needs Parliament for, the only thing he needs the Senate for, is making new laws or repealing laws that are already there. He can effectively use the Governor General's signature to spend as much money as he wants without any oversight. He can effectively use the Governor General's signature to enforce laws that are already on the books in any way that he likes. Now, that's the magic of the Governor General's office, is that you can interpret a piece of legislation and you can come up with an order in council that effectively creates new rules, but it's just an extension of the enforcement of the rules that are already on the books. So he has a wide range of power. He just can't get bills passed. So honestly, he doesn't need Parliament. This is something I've been trying to communicate over and over again, that cabinet is government, that the Governor General is government, the King's representative is government. Parliamentarians are not government. They are lawmakers or law repealers, and effectively the government doesn't need them. And I don't know how we could be this long without a sitting parliament, with the country moving forward, even if it is grinding to a halt. Billions and billions of dollars are being spent in your name without any elected oversight. And it's been going on for the better part of a year. And by the time this is all over with, if you look at the 3-week blip where Parliament's actually going to sit, it's going to be almost a year without any form of elected representation. This sucks, folks. It's terrible. Everybody should want to do better. But to wrap this up, because I don't have much juice left in the tank here, I think we may not be able to deduce everything that Carney's going to do. We looked at his book and what he said he was going to do there. The thing we have to understand about values is that it was written in 2021, and there are some insertions that came later which suspiciously look like somebody gearing up to come in and run Canada. Like, it looks like they were inserted. It's almost like this was a plan. It's almost like they had all this in mind. How could it not be? They had the fake leadership run in the Liberal Party, and then we have this fake election. They went from 167, 168 seats. Now they're up to 171. Judicial recounts that find that 99.7% of the votes that were counted went to the Liberal Party. Like, can you smell the corruption? I don't trust any of it anymore. How can you? How can you be reasonable and trust a process that keeps handing them seats? Now all they got to do is come up with one NDP member, one Bloc member. They just got to come up with one from somewhere. Maybe they'll come up with it for further judicial finagling. It's so sick. It's so sick what we've become. Canada functioned fairly well when Parliament had a semblance of honor. But in the last 10 years, a bunch of looters took over and created a new way to manipulate Canada. The loopholes were all there. They were always there. But no one drove a Mack truck through them like the Liberal government did. And now you've got a career looter who is in the Prime Minister's office, who understands the power of the Governor General's office, and the governing in a new executive way that's never been done in Canada before until Justin Trudeau pioneered the method. It had been done in limited ways, but only under limited circumstances. Now it's being done in a far more total way, and apparently Canada is just fine with it. We do have some Liberal commentators like Andrew Cohen saying, whoopsie, they lied to us. Oh no, they're having buyer's remorse because the Liberal government is going to have continuity with the Trudeau government. We knew it was coming. Many of us have been trying to tell these individuals this story for a lot longer than the election's been declared, and we were all ridiculed and called fools and conspiracy theorists, and now we're here. Canada is a banana monarchy. It is a semblance of a country. It's not a very good one. And I think it's safe to say that it's falling apart all around you. And you have now allowed the foxes back into the henhouse. And one of the hypothesis that I've put forward on this channel is that Mark Carney is here to seal the deal, to seal the destruction of this country. The timeline for that destruction, maybe my thinking was too short. I was thinking 6 months to a year. You want to bring this to a head, you go to a trade war with the United States, things come to a head really quick. But the powers that be don't want things to come to a head quickly. They want to pace it out because mass-scale civil unrest and disorder does not suit their interests. They need a slow boil. They need people to suffer over time in order to create the political will for whatever solutions they want to dump on us, which could very well be the end of a sovereign Canada at the end of the day. But figuring out specifically what Carney's going to do, it's not as easy as reading his book Values. Because in 2021, climate change and DEI was still big money. And it wasn't private money, even though a lot of it was. It was publicly steered money. So it was taxpayer dollars and regulation forcing private capital to chase those ideas. So there was a lot of money, billions and billions and billions of dollars, maybe even trillions of dollars to be made by pushing that ideology. But the ideology itself has failed. It doesn't work. It doesn't make money. So there's a very real chance that it will be abandoned by this government. We don't know. Carney is good at making money for his class. That's what he's here to do. He sees the Canadian taxpayer as somebody to harvest, as a people to harvest. That's another thing I wanted to talk about. The Australian government has pioneered, first of its kind in the world, a tax on unrealized capital gains. Now, this has been floated here in Canada. We'll get into that next. But anybody that has over $3 million in investments, if those investments not even generate profit, if the value of those investments, the paper value of those investments goes up, they want to tax that paper value, even if you haven't converted it to cash or done any trading. And the way this is going to work is, say your $3 million becomes $3.5 million. So you're going to pay a tax on that $500,000, and it's a rather punitive tax, but you never got the $500,000. So let's assume you can come up with the cash to pay for the money that you never even made. It's so absurd that I got to even explain this. So you pay your $150,000 in taxes to the Australian state. The next year, the value of your assets decline. Instead of being worth $3.5 million, they're worth 2.5 or 2. Instead of getting the money back that you paid the state, now you get a capital loss that you get to claim against your income, but you never get your money back. You have to rely on the economy improving in order for you to claim those capital losses. It's a nightmare. So let's hope that Australia is the only one that does this, because what's going to happen is mass-scale capital flight out of Australia, and I hope the world sees it happening, and I hope we're not stupid enough to follow suit. But how this applies to Canada, the Liberals have floated an idea in the past of taxing your principal residence on sale. So if your principal residence is worth X amount of dollars and you sell it, they want to tax over and above a certain amount. But they've also floated the idea in the past of an unrealized capital gain tax. The same nightmare fuel that's happening in Australia right now. It's a way to punish people for saving money. It's a way to punish people for paying their mortgages off. And there's a lot of ways it can manifest. It can be a tax on the equity value of your free and clear house. Something like 36, 37% of Canadians own their homes outright, mostly retirees, but other people. You would be taxed, I'm guessing, like a property tax, so a certain percentage of the value of the equity in your house, and this is theoretical value. This is the other part. Who assesses the value of your house? Everybody who is in the mortgage game knows that the whatever it's called in your area, the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, or whatever it's called in your province, assesses the value of your home and property, and then that's the value that calculates your property taxes and how much you owe. But your insurance company assesses the premium on your insurance using a completely different number, which is the replacement cost of your home. Somewhere between those two numbers is reality. And then, on top of that, there is the real estate market disparity. The house that I live in currently, its replacement cost is much higher than what I can actually sell it for, because it was kind of a one-way ticket. I'm too deep in the bush. You know, the house sat empty for 7 years. It's incredible, actually, that it sat empty and nobody else took it off the market. It's like 20-odd million people who live in overly priced real estate markets and for some reason still aren't taking advantage. I just saw a house sell 40 or 50-minute drive from here for $40,000. Now, sure, it needs work. And sure, it's a small house. But if you're starting out, there's work here. I don't understand how this value proposition still exists. I don't know what people think is wrong with Saskatchewan. You know, it's an awesome place. But anyway, I digress. This idea of taxing the equity in your home is another property tax on top of the property tax you're already paying, a federal property tax. It's disgusting. And then the idea of actually taxing unrealized capital gains, so taxing money that you never made, and then when you lose money in the future, you don't get the money back. You just have to you claim a capital loss. I don't know if I'm explaining this properly. You pay real money for money that you never made. But then on the other side, when you lose money, you don't get your real money back. You just get to take a write-off against future profits. But if the country's tanking and there's no money to be made, you don't even get the benefit of the write-off of the capital loss. I hope this isn't too arcane for people. This is like 10, 15 years ago. These were verboten. You wouldn't have even a conversation around something so stupid. But it's quite possible that this liberal government will try and do it. The bottom line is, we don't actually know what Carney's going to do. He's impossible to read. The only thing we know is he's good at making money for his class, and that puts you, as just a regular pleb Canadian, even if you're a regular pleb Canadian with several $1 million in assets, it puts you at a disadvantage because you are a piggy bank. Your pensions are piggy banks. Your equity are piggy banks. Your assets are piggy banks. For this man and for his class, we've never been under a greater threat than we are right now. I'm Frank Vaughn, and I will see you in the next one.